Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics. In this video, I'm going to be discussing the data surrounding COVID, PPE data and testing data in particular, and how the lies that the government told to deflect criticism when we were hitting the peak of the first wave initially have started to come out particularly recently. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. Now, I suppose if we're going to be talking about COVID-related data, some of you, in fact, I know at least one person might have been expecting me to talk about the adjustment that the government have made to the number of COVID deaths. They've knocked down the official number by 5,000, which as some wag on Twitter pointed out, that takes us from being the worst hit country in Europe to the worst hit country in Europe still, because even if you knock 5,000 deaths off those figures, we're still the worst. And then someone emailed me to say, are you going to be talking about this? And I said, well, I am actually going to be doing a video on talking about data, but mostly from a PPE and testing point of view, because the official data on number of COVID deaths has been fiddled from the start. At no point has it ever been believable, and we now don't believe we ever could get a really believable figure anyway, which is why most people go off the excess deaths. Because of course, yes, that will also include people who've died from things that are not COVID related, but that it will still be people who've died because of our handling of it, because that's what matters. It's not really about from the point of view of using the data usefully, how many people succumbed to the virus as such. It's really comparing ourselves internationally in terms of how well did we do compared with how we could and should have done. So excess deaths is a far better measure, and the government aren't fiddling that one. But in terms of other things, as the coronavirus pandemic was getting serious around the world, half a year ago now, and we were bracing for landfall in the UK, the government, remember, were declining the opportunity to join the EU procurement scheme for medical supplies. We also later find out that we'd failed to stockpile the items that had been advised. So just in terms of general readiness for pandemic, because it's been considered the number one threat by the government for a decade now. So there's always been things ongoing to prepare for it. And we were supposed to be stockpiling certain pieces of medical equipment last year and didn't. The government said, no, we're not paying for medical equipment that's just going to go into a warehouse. And then in February, when it was like, actually, do you know what? This is coming now. We're not just preparing for something that's going to come at some point. It's coming now. We need to get this stuff. The government was no, don't. So we failed to stockpile. And then, of course, when it became time for the rest of the country to look at the government and say, you need to get this stuff in now, they were going, oh, sorry, this is this unprecedented demand for medical supplies. We're struggling to get some in. You what? And also we had a scenario where we knew that British-based manufacturers of PPE, as well as COVID tests when it comes to it, but PPE especially, were saying, look, we're producing stuff for other countries. We haven't got any NHS orders. To which, the question was reasonably asked, why are the government not putting orders in? It turns out, of course, again, we found out later, that the reason for this is because the government wanted to funnel the money instead into the hands of Tory donors, friends and other close associates. But as the crisis wore on, and the new Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, was hammering Boris Johnson on a weekly basis about our lack of levelling up for the pandemic, Boris Johnson, his only defence against it was to talk about the numbers. The numbers of PPE being ordered and delivered, and the numbers of testing and all the rest of it. That's all he can do is numbers. And I pointed out at the time, and I'll point out to this day, numbers are irrelevant. What matters if you're going to quote numbers is, quote the number you've done compared with what you need to do. How far short is it? But that's what he came out with. He came out with these massive numbers of PPE that had been ordered and delivered. We sort of knew that they were lies because even at the time we were seeing, reports of items being counted twice, counting items of PPE that weren't actually PPE, delivering PPE that exceeded its expiry date, putting a sticker over it, said, oh, it expires sometime in the future, but actually doctors were peeling the sticker off and noting that the actual expiry date was some years ago. So we sort of knew that there was an awful lot of fiddling in the figures going. They were delivering this stuff purely so that they could say that they've been delivering so many millions of pieces of PPE. But there have been legal challenges, and legal challenges unfortunately take a while, but you know, they've been ongoing. And for example, there was the little issue of the millions of medical gowns. That got into a right old mess, didn't it? If we remember, I mean, we were supposed to be getting a certain amount of stuff through. There was the hold up in Turkey, and then and ministers who were told by the civil service, don't mention this thing until it's arrived and we've checked it's what we wanted. And ministers were going, oh, we've got this stuff arriving tomorrow. And then tomorrow came and it never arrived. Oh, it's arriving soon. And then when it arrived, it wasn't what we wanted, so we had to send it back. So that was good. But anyway, as part of all this shambles, the Good Law Project, who you'll have heard me talk about before, and they're getting very much into this, you know, these government contracts for PPE in particular. And the question was asked basically of the Department of Health, you know, how much of this stuff has actually been delivered, how much have we actually got? The Department of Health, Matt Hancock's Department of Health responded, you know, it's all there, we're only missing 40,000 gowns. Good Law Project sort of hammered at them a bit. And then the response was, sorry, did we say we're just missing 40,000? Sorry, what we actually meant is we're missing 6 million. 6 million gowns that they were trying to claim had been ordered and delivered. Turns out, oh, actually, no, we don't have them after all. Sorry, misheard you. Now, there were also recently, oh yeah, that was the other thing. So the PPE that also were counted on those figures. Remember, Boris Johnson was he's always about the short term, isn't it? He doesn't care if there's comeback later on. He deals with whatever is the hot potato at the time. So at the time, you know, we're in the situation where deaths are rising, cases are rising, and he needed to show that he was delivering the PPE. And he would just quote these numbers, even though we knew they weren't true. So all those boxes of PPE that were delivered with the wrong expiry date on them, they'd actually already expired. Hospitals have now been told not to use them, to throw them out. Because now that it is no longer the political hot potato in the media, they're fine. No one's going to be, you know, it's not going to be a big even though people are asking the government, so what was the real numbers now? The media aren't putting a spotlight on it. So they feel safe to sort of make these adjustments now and tell the people to throw these things out. And then there's the testing front. So, you know, the way this was fiddled, it was fiddled in a number of ways. So one way is because the test involves a stick, which you stick up your nose and down your throat, they count that as 2 tests, even though that's one person tested. They also they kept trying to shift the narrative when it was quite clear they weren't going to meet their testing targets. They initially tried to talk about testing capacity. Oh, we've got this capacity. So if we've got people being turned away and can't get tests when they need tests, how can we have greater capacity than the number of tests being carried out? Then they tried to talk about tests being carried out instead of because what matters is number of people tested, a person being tested. Like I say, if you count a person being tested as 2 tests, well, that's misleading. Then they stopped publishing the numbers of people being tested altogether, because the narrative was supposed to be by the end of April, we'll be testing 100,000 people a day. They never did. At no point have we ever tested 100,000 people in a single day. The end of April, they tried to claim that we had. What they did is they added onto the figures a load of tests that, first of all, some tests, tens of thousands that they'd mailed out. It's like 25,000 or something that they'd mailed out. So those tests hadn't actually been carried out yet. They'd just been sent to people. We don't know if at the other end they'd ever been used, because quite a lot of these tests weren't all that easy to use. They didn't come with clear instructions, things like that. So a lot of the tests were no good anyway. And some of the tests that were sent out for home testing as well, when people tried to log onto the system that would allow them to register their details, that didn't work. So quite a lot of those tests were wasted and never took place but they certainly didn't take place on the day. They just sent a load out, a mail shot on one particular day, and went, right, that's that done, and added it onto the figures. And then the other thing is, they even included, just because they were still, even that wasn't going to get them to the 100,000, they even included saying they were going to mail some out. So people ringing in that, yeah, we'll mail one out, and they add it onto that day. So massive, massive fiddles. Now the government have had to make another adjustment on tests carried out. So they've removed about 1.3 million tests from their official figures of tests carried out. That is 7%. Of all the tests that a couple of days ago they were claiming took place, 7% of them they've now just wiped off. And that's not to say that we've now got the true figure, because like I say, all those other fiddles still in place. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous. That's a huge number to suddenly wipe out. And again, reason why they're doing this now is because they gained the benefit from before, the media spotlight's on it. You're not going to see this being announced in the headlines. And, you know, a lot of the tests as well, it sort of also turned out when the government's made these adjustments, you look on their, the website, the Department of Health, they were also talking about tests that had been sent out to, say, care homes. Now, one of the problems with this idea of tests being sent out being counted is because when care homes asked for COVID tests, they were sent to them in boxes of 50. Now, that means you're not going to use an exact multiple of 50. In fact, some care homes wouldn't have even needed 50, but they got a box of 50. So there'll be tests just lying on shelves somewhere, heading towards their expiry date, not being used. And again, the figures for that have come out as well. So of the just over 1 million tests that was sent out to care homes, fewer than 400,000 were actually used, have registered as being used. So that means the majority of them, in fact, 3/5 of them, 3/5 pretty much, haven't been used at all. They were sent out, counted on figures, not been used at all. So the whole thing has been hideously, hideously fiddled. They're bringing this stuff out now because they know it's not big news. And this stuff will continue to carry on because it works. When the media spotlight is on a thing, they announce something. They either lie about what they're doing or they say they're going to do something. And then when the heat's died down, then they come out with because they know they can't lie about it forever. They know the facts will ultimately come out. So they just make sure, they just defer it, knowing that everyone will have got bored and gone on to the next thing. Which is why not only is it Nigel Farage shouting at the scene the last couple of weeks, government ministers have been getting on it. Oh, this is good. This is good. That means there's even less chance of this stuff being published in the papers. We'll shout at the sea. But anyway, there it is. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.